that wasn't the case for us here. It's more like, okay, we're online, but we are not going to buy the data because it's quite expensive. So we're going to keep our cameras off, we're going to keep our mics muted, and then the teachers are like, we don't know if this person was even in class or if they just logged in and ran off.
Welcome to another episode of the Let's Talk Education Africa podcast. I'm excited. 2024 is proving to be very, very interesting. I am having the privilege of meeting a lot of people within the space, specifically the EdTech space. I don't know, it seems for a while now I've just been connecting with people, coming up with solutions that leverage on technology to, in a sense, positively impacts the way education is delivered, managed overall. And the guest I have with me today is working with this really exciting organization that's doing something that really caught my interest. And I invited her over to come and tell us more about what her outfit has been doing and what they do really. So today with me, I have the Chief Operations Officer at an exciting EdTech brand called Chalkboard Education. That's their name, Chalkboard Education. I'm sure you might be thinking, well, Chalkboard, we're in 2024. But, well, I'm sure when she goes into it, you'll figure out what exactly it is. And they're on a mission to aid organizations train their staff digitally with ease from any device without internet. I think that's the part that jumped at me, because there's this whole conversation about how internet penetration is on a high, and it is opening up the space for a lot of innovation to take place. With me in studio today, I have Genevieve Simiyu. I hope I didn't butcher your name.
No, it's actually as easy as it looks.
Good. So I have a big Genevieve Simiyu. She's going to, unpack what Chalkboard Education does. And I'm looking forward to an exciting conversation. Genevieve, welcome to the Let's Talk Education Africa podcast.
Thanks, Kwame. So it's funny that we're doing a lot of conversations on education. In the past, like I've always told people when they ask me how the story is, I always tell them that what happened is, I'd always been going to school since as long as I could remember. And I was like, okay, I need a break from school. And that's how I ended up in a different part of the continent. And, I just sort of took a break from life, only to find myself back in education and talking about improving schools and, the ways of learning every other day. So that's a plot twist I did not see coming, but I'm happy to be on this life path.
Awesome. I like the part where you said you took a break from life. That's really interesting. I mean, I guess as I grow older, I am beginning to appreciate how taking a pause, taking a break is incredibly important. It allows for, a moment of reflection to figure out what it is that you're trying to do. And in some cases, sort of, recenter, find your North Star, and then, you sort of run with what you decide on. I'm really excited to have you. EdTech is a space that I've been, paying attention to, especially during the COVID, during COVID and then post COVID. What's exciting for me is that a lot of innovations are popping up, and I'm happy to have you here talk about Chalkboard Education. So I want to start with this question. Tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you told us you took a break from life, but give us a brief, your background, and all of that.
Right. So, like I mentioned, I was born a child. My parents were very influential in my upbringing. So, of course, they made all the decisions in my life for quite a long time. So, where I'm going to go to school, what I'm going to eat, what I'm going to wear. To an extent, who my friends are, because it's based on their networks, and it was also based on where I went to school and all that stuff. So, these are all decisions that they had made. And, I got done with my undergrad, and they were still, very vocal about what my next step would be, as any African parent would be. And they were thinking, all right, so now you're going to move on and you're going to go and pursue your master's degree. You're going to work for the World Bank and for the UN, because I'd already rejected the doctor, lawyer trajectory. So they're like, all right, next best thing is going to be UN, World Bank, something big out there. And I was thinking, this is where the taking a break from life comes in terms of like, oh, hold on, like, not to be like sound ungrateful or anything. I love the life they provided me, but I was like, let me see if I've learned enough from all these years of being a child to survive on my own. And what shocked them was like I had never moved out of home. I always like refused to go to boarding school. I refused to like move out during campus because we have a very good relationship. So, people normally want to move out because they want their freedom and stuff like that. But my parents always gave me their freedom. Being a firstborn, I'm pretty much the second parent. So having conversations with them is not a problem. It's easy to go to them and tell them A, B, C, D, and if it makes sense, they're on board. So I was thinking that, all right, so that was like the first difficult conversation I was having with them was like, okay, I want to go and try my luck out in the world and see if I can fly based on the skills I have learned throughout these other years. Initially, I was actually thinking of Nigeria because I was like, if you make it in Nigeria, you can make it anywhere. And my friends were like, no, we don't think you have that much skill to survive Nigeria. Come on.
Okay.
You're playing yourself, you're playing us. Like, this is a good joke, but no. Growing up in East Africa or Kenya, we don't really focus much, or we didn't really focus much on West Africa at the time. So we always used to hear the horror stories about the civil wars and the coups and all that stuff. So we never used to think that there's actually life happening outside of, the war and all that stuff. So I was really keen on going to West Africa because I had grown up in East Africa. I traveled through South Africa quite a bit, and I wanted to know more about Africa. I didn't want to leave the continent and go and find my way in Europe or in America or wherever else people go for greener pastures. I was like, yeah, my green pastures are here in Africa. I love the weather. I love the food. I was like, I'm not going to survive outside of this trapping. So yeah, so when I say no to Nigeria, at that point I was like, I don't know any other English-speaking countries that I can go to. And a show came on. I was like, focus on Ghana. I'm like, oh my goodness, yes, there is Ghana, and it's an English-speaking country. So
Right.
I went back to them and I'm like, guys, I have a better idea. So I want to go to Ghana, and fortunately, they met a couple of Ghanaians before, and they, loved Ghanaians, and they're like, oh yeah, they're nice people. My grandparents actually adopted, in quotes, a Ghanaian priest when he was doing his theology classes in Kenya. They adopted him for like 3 years, and he always felt at home. Even now, he goes back to my village to visit them whenever he's in the country. So in Ghana, they actually had no qualms about that, and they're like, yeah, sure, but we don't really think you're gonna survive that long, so we're gonna give you like a month. And I'm like, no, I can do this. So, just like self determination of like, I cannot do less than a month because, yeah, I'll never hear the end of it. And be like, remember the time we went to Ghana and you couldn't even survive 2 weeks? So I was like, okay. So I didn't know anyone in Ghana. Like, I had some virtual friends or like friends of friends, but I didn't actually know anyone, like have a solid connection. So I arrived in Ghana and I came to ISET, which is a student-run organization, and we're working on projects on digital literacy in digital literacy for Microsoft and financial literacy for Standard Chartered. So that involved like preparing content, teaching, training across the country. And I really love that. But that also exposed me to like a lot of the similarities that we have in Ghana and in Kenya. Was like there's this gap when it comes to education. A lot of the education is happening the same way. So people are using blackboards or chalkboards for education. Of course, that's not helpful for the teachers, and then the information is wiped off, so it just disappears. If you don't take it down, then that's that. And I was like, no, that's not going to be a sustainable way for things to work. So that's how the chalkboard idea actually came up. Was like, okay, we're doing a lot of the same things. Like you can see that the youth and the students have a hunger for knowledge, and they're always trying to learn something. They're always trying to sign up for some online course. So this was all happening on platforms that were not made in Ghana or for the African market. So it required like really good internet connections. The content was not customized or localized enough. So you're reading and learning about great information, but it's not applicable to your environment. You have to do the extra work of actually trying to break it down and understand how you can apply it to your environment. So that was a good opportunity at that point, and that's how my co-founders and I decided that we're going to tackle this problem. And of course, we're thinking at the time we're thinking of working at higher education institutions. So we're thinking of university students because they already had like devices, so they actually had a phone in their hand or they had like a computer, a laptop, or they had access to these resources as opposed to the younger learners who did not. their own phones and not have to rely on their parents and so on and so forth. And that's how the chocolate idea was born.
Interesting, really interesting. And I mean, as you were narrating your story, you said, you were firstborn. All the while you were speaking, I was like, you were giving firstborn energy about some of the decisions you were taking, etc. But I mean,
Yeah.
I get to see how, at some point in your life, you just want to, in a sense, find your way. And I think it's a blessing. It's a blessing to have parents who are open to listen to you and allow you to just make your own decisions, find your way, make the mistakes, and then assuring you and making you know that regardless of whatever path you take, they're trusting that you would make the best of it, and even if it doesn't work out, they're still open and ready to welcome you back to sort of figure things out. And that's really an amazing story.
Very long time if I didn't, but if I didn't make it, but I was like, okay, even if it's like 1 month and 1 day,
Right.
like I just have to outlive whatever they thought I would.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
well, interesting. It really is interesting. Wow. I know you've touched on the chalkboard thing a bit, but one thing I have come to realize about the education space, no matter what area you are in, is you need to have a certain level of passion and commitment to be a part of it. And I mean, listening to the backstory, how you grew up, all of that, your parents having everything else aligned for you and you breaking out, breaking the mold and, charting your own path. I want to go a little back to your childhood to ask if there was a particular context in your childhood that you believe has influenced the path that you are on. And by path, I'm talking about the education space. Is there something from your parents? Is there something from your school, back in childhood that sort of, if when you think back, you're like, this probably, had an influence, on the path that I'm on today.
Definitely, because there's so many scenarios. I think maybe I'll give you three.
Mhm.
So yeah, basically it's just about the passion is there. I didn't know it was that strong until of course I started this work. And before it was just like I'm aware like this is the state of affairs in the country or in terms of education even in the community, but it wasn't that deep. So the first let's call it a trigger. The first trigger was like my granddad. So my African history. My grandparents were born during the colonial period,
Mm.
so they had the colonial, let's call them colonial people. I don't want to say powers, but let's call them the colonial people, colonizers, working or determining their fate. And my grandfather on my dad's side was quite a stubborn guy, and they're like, okay, yeah, so now all the kids have to go to school. And you have to like be, I think, a certain height, or you have to be able to like reach your ear
Mm-hmm.
to go to, from one class to the next. I'm not sure what it was in Ghana, but that's how it was being done in Kenya. And or have a certain amount of teeth. And my granddad didn't have that. So for the longest time, they kept telling him he can't join school because he was too small. So he just like hated the whole idea of school because he's like his hand cannot reach over his head to touch his ear, or he doesn't have the right number of teeth and all that stuff. So he just hated the idea of school and just put off it completely. So finally, when he could go to school, he refused to go to school. And this was like maybe 1930s, give or take.
Mm.
Yeah. So I mean, late 1930s, give or take. So he refused to go to school, and like my great grandfather used to like beg him, like, please, you have to go to school because that's the only way you'll not be, conscripted to join the army and all that stuff. And my granddad didn't believe it could happen because he's like, yeah, no, they're not gonna come for me. But when they did come calling, they're like, okay, they want soldiers, and soldiers would have to be young, strong men. And this were the soldiers that were going to fight in World War II. And he's like, oh, okay, this is really happening. And they're like, okay, so how they're gonna do it is like they need people to be administrators. So the people who are going to school would remain in Kenya and be administrators. But the ones who weren't going to school would be soldiers because they didn't have any academic training or, anything to offer in quotes the country. So they would now go to war in Burma back then. And so that's how my granddad actually was conscripted into the World War II British Army, and he went to Burma. And of course, at that point, he realized the importance of education. So he refused to fight on the front line. he pretended to be a medical officer. He like tried to learn as much as he could from the doctors, and just like never made it to the front lines. And he came back home, but I think he saw so much trauma, and he's like, this
Mm.
all this could be avoided, if he had actually, had gone to school. So he had that trauma for quite a while, actually. Like even as he got older, you could see that the memories he had that were the strongest were of his time at war. So it had quite an impact on him. But for him, at that point, he decided like all his kids are going to school. So my dad, his siblings, and then the grandchildren as well. He'd be so invested in like making sure you're going to school, getting good grades, because he's like that's the only thing that's going to save you, and that's the only thing that can help you make your own decisions when the time comes. So that was the first instance of things, and then the second thing is like still tied to that was like okay, so still back to the colonial situation is that those communities that were collaborating and then those were rebelling. So on my dad's side of the family, they were rebellious and they were like rebelling against the British and all that stuff. So they didn't have any amenities. All their stuff was being destroyed. They would like burn the silos that were storing the grains. They would destroy the houses. They would just, cause chaos. But on my mom's side, they were more collaborative because they come from the kingdom. And what happened was that they had more amenities. So they were being given the best schools, the best cars, the best everything, just as a way to keep them above the rest of their population. So my mom went to school pretty well, and my dad went to school as best as he could, but he was very determined now because my granddad was in his case. He's like, yeah, you have to go to school and go to school pretty well. Even if the situation is really hard, you're gonna have to make it. So he was like writing in the sand, that's how they used to learn. Well, I don't know how true this is, African parents can really dramatize their schooling experience. But yeah, so he's like writing in the sand in school without shoes and all that stuff, which is opposite of my mom's experience. My mom like, he always had notebooks, she always had shoes to go to school and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, like he went to school pretty well, got scholarships, and became like one of the leading engineers in the country. And I was like, oh, okay, that's the transformative power of education. You can go from people who have had nothing to lifting an entire village out of poverty. And I was like, yeah, that's definitely really important. And then I think the third example would be, or the third trigger would be just, my parents' influence in my life was like learn everything, try as much as you can to discover your talents, your likes, your dislikes, like be as curious and invested in your own personal growth. And of course, we do that through education, or even if it's not the, traditional education where you're sitting in the classroom, go outside, network, meet people, learn something new from everybody, even if it's not being taught to you in a classroom setting, just try and improve yourself day to day. So that's pretty much been my North Star going forward. And that's why they didn't really struggle with decisions because it was their idea, like for me to be an explorer and explorer I became.
That's a very eye-opening story. Anybody who has their grandparents still alive and they're still able to, connect, talk to them, spend time with them, are very lucky because they in a sense open up and make you experience, the mentality of a different time, that's
Yeah,
that's
no, that's
really
true.
yeah, that's really an amazing story, just how, that time forced him to maybe, if you like, see certain perspectives that have become so normalized now. So going to school now, it's just like, going to school is like, you have to go to school.
Yeah,
But
you
at
have to
the
go to school.
time,
Yeah,
it was a very different, a very different experience, and that sort of influenced his conviction really about making sure everybody, in his in his family went to school. It's from a much deeper, it's from a deeper place, and
yeah, that's
I
true.
really do like the way you unpacked it. Wow. One of the reasons
Yeah,
this one thing I say, one of the reasons I enjoy talking to people is you get to hear stories, and I feel like stories are amazing things because they paint a picture of a very nuance, a context that you might probably, or perspective that you might probably have not been paying attention to or looking at, or maybe possibly thought didn't exist, and it makes it real, and you get to pick.
exactly. Yeah.
You get to pick a lot from there. Really interesting, really interesting story. Thank you so much for sharing that. Wow, time is flying. Okay, let's jump into. I want your take on the disruptions that your brief take on the disruptions and innovations that's happening in education, especially. I want you to start from COVID. From COVID to post COVID.
Okay, so I've touched a little before that. We
Okay.
did the existence
Okay,
before
good.
that.
Right.
So at the time, we were using education for technology was not as popular as it is now. Back then, it was such an alien idea. It's like, why would we need to use our phones when we can see each other every day? And what we were thinking at the time was like, okay, we had free SFS coming up, and we were thinking, okay, so we're going to have an influx of students joining university, but the universities are not going to be expanding as quickly. So there's going to be a number of students who don't get to go to university, even if they get the grades for it. But of course, the universities were like, oh yeah, this is still a bit ahead of time. We have to do the right policies. We have to make sure that you can use technology for teaching and have so many approvals happening. So it was a conversation that we kept pursuing for some time. But what's interesting was like after COVID, everybody we had seen before now came back to us and they're like, okay, so first of all, they're like, are you guys still alive? Because they didn't think EdTech was a thing that would go far. So they're like, oh, wait, do you guys still exist? We're like, yeah, we're still here. They're like, okay, good. We want to go live. We want to upload all our content on the platform and roll it out to our students who are now who are now learning from home, wherever they are. And we're like, oh, great, that's musical to our ears, but it's coming from so many people at the same time. So, of course, we were like stretched really thin. And we're thinking of how we're like, okay, we've been praying for scale and been like, always telling investors to go ahead and get this many users in a matter of months, but now we're getting it overnight in a week. We're getting like 100,000 of users coming towards our platform. And we're like, oh, okay, this is an interesting problem that we are not really prepared for. But at the same time, a lot of people started working on platforms, different platforms for education. So there's education, there's learning management systems, which is just like where you log in, take a course, do your quizzes, do a survey or whatever, and it gets graded by the teachers. But there's also like school management systems, where the head teacher is able to monitor what the teachers are doing, if they're absent or not, if there is enough classrooms, if there's enough furniture in the classroom. We have that as well. And then we also have the payment system. So some schools just like want to enable their students and their parents to pay them without having to come physically to the school. So a lot of people started providing various solutions, and the edtech space grew tremendously overnight. I think we went from maybe like four really well-known companies in Ghana to at least 45 or six. By the time the report was going out in 2020, the number had grown quite exponentially. Yeah, and of course, at that time we didn't know how long COVID would last. We were thinking it's going to be thing for a while because initially in my head I was like, oh, this is just a cold. It's going to take like 2 weeks. We all lock ourselves indoors. After 2 weeks, we can be free and back to business as usual. But yeah, human beings are human beings, and nobody wanted to follow guidelines. And of course, the thing lasted longer than I thought it would. Yeah, so lots of companies came up at the time. And the thing that helped us who were early in the game was that we were familiar and people knew us and had met us face to face, which was an important connection for some people to me. It was that I need to have spoken to these people before I put my money in the product. So that's how we were able to thrive in that era. And a few other companies that came after us. A lot of edtech companies are still coming up. Just last week, Thursday, I was having a conversation with a friend who's launching her own. She hasn't started building a platform or anything, but she's at the idea stage. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. There's lots of opportunity across the world for it. So definitely go for forth and prosper. But yeah, I think now that we're post COVID and now moving on, of course, there's more need to have in person sessions. People are social beings and learning from home and remotely articulate to millions of people. So people are now moving a little away from EdTech, but some people are also adopting a blended approach where they have some lessons in person, some lessons virtually, or maybe they do assignments virtually and they do their reading virtually, and then they come to class and have a discussion. So we can see this kind of evolutions happening in the edtech space. So we have a lot of players coming into the space. We're looking for investors to come into the space as well, because that's one of the key problems that we're facing, or key challenges, which we'll discuss later.
You said something that stood out to me, which was the fact that post-COVID, we are having a situation where some people in some quarters are moving away from edtech products, surprisingly. And we also have a situation where others are, we have the situation of a blended approach where they're leveraging on the edtech products plus, some of the old methods. And we are having another category that is, wholeheartedly opening up to the whole idea of leveraging on tech and exploring the many innovations available to generally improve education in their classrooms. And I genuinely do appreciate that because, well, the narrative is sort of pushed. The narrative being pushed is, everybody's adopting edtech products, and there are so many people popping up in the space, and the penetration is high. But I mean, it's good to have people on the ground who share what's happening, really what's happening in reality, making us know exactly what's happening. I remember I had a conversation with one guest. He's into the STEM space, I believe, and he mentioned something that's left a print in my mind, which is the fact that he said we actually do have a situation where education is a dinosaur, right? So it's, in a sense, he was saying that education has or is a very conservative sector. And so the switch, right? COVID really forced us, it put us in a corner where we, in a sense, didn't have a choice. We had to leverage on some of these tools, technological tools, etc., to make sure learning continued, because we never dreamt of having a situation where would all have to be shut in our homes. But post COVID, I'm guessing the narrative will be, yay, we've come out of the dark, and we are happy to have technology pop up. We're having a situation where, even despite the fact that we have foreign, tech products that, invaded our space during COVID, we are having a situation where a lot of Africans are coming up with, very localized indigenous, solutions that have leverage on tech quite well, because they understand the context, they understand the problem, and they're able to give the support when needed to the customers that might use their products. We have a lot of them popping up, like you also alluded to, but it's a rather tough situation, and so this will be for another conversation, to where we'll probably unpack why there's this unfortunate slow assimilation to the use and implementation of edtech, tools and services and so on and so forth. But anyway, yeah, thank you for
I mean, I can
sharing.
see
Go on.
responses to that last
Mhm.
comment. Like what we call it is like the trend. So we have a lot of people coming on board, like trying out the platforms and trying to see if it's a fit for them. And we have a number of them actually dropping off, which is one of the biggest problems in EdTech. I think the dropout rate was about 50% last I checked. But some of the things that cause that is that the user experience might not be great, because, like I said, during COVID, everyone was like, we need to go live right now, and they didn't really have the content suited for e-learning. So sure, you have a textbook and you want to digitize the entire textbook and just make the students read it as is, which would not be a great learning experience. That's more like a digital, an ebook, and it's not really a learning experience per se. So the learners come on board, hoping to interact with the platforms, with the interactivity matters. They should be able to ask questions or interact with someone who maybe a peer, maybe a teacher, someone who just makes the experience more classroom life, more learning life. But that's not an experience that learners were getting. So that's one of the things that caused the high churn rate. And then another thing was for the teachers who are not really trained on how to teach using digital platforms by the time COVID was happening. So there was that gap that needed to be filled. And that's one of the projects, one of the tangents we went on after, rolling out a variety of different programs, like customizing the content, making sure it was user friendly and all that. We realized that, okay, teachers are struggling to teach and actually know if the learners are learning. So there's one hand where they're not familiar with how to teach online, and then they get the hang of it. It's like, how do we know that learning has taken place? Because when you're in the classroom, you can see a student scratching their head in confusion or not following the class and all that stuff. But when you're doing it virtually, areas where there's not much or where the internet is expensive, so you can't really have your cameras on and all that. You're not able to actively watch your learners and see what they're doing. So, we saw videos coming out of the US and the UK and the likes, where students would go to class and have the cameras on and the teacher can actually watch what they're doing. But that wasn't the case for us here. It's more like, okay, we're online, but we are not going to buy the data because it's quite expensive. So we're going to keep our cameras off, we're going to keep our mics muted, and then the teachers are like, we don't know if this person is even in class. or if they just logged in and ran off out to play. So those are some of the challenges that EdTech companies will need to address, especially those working with younger learners who need a bit more guidance when using e-learning platforms.
That's really interesting. So a fair assessment of, in a sense, what you said, and correct me if I'm wrong, is basically we had a situation that was dark, that was COVID, right? So COVID put us in a corner where we were literally trying to grasp something to prevent us from drowning. It's in a sense forced us to come up with solutions, but despite the rise in the numbers, i.e., the fact that we're having a situation where lots of innovations are popping up, there's a gap where there has to be an acknowledgement on the part of these creators or people who are coming up with these tools, etc., to pay attention to our contexts and have a way of, in a sense, understanding the parent, understanding the student, understanding the teacher, and understanding all the other stakeholders within the education space in order to make sure that whatever solution that we come up with is something that is nuanced, and it shows and demonstrates an understanding of who the user is, you understand, and how all of the stakeholders are connected in order to get the best out of the solution that has been put forth.
Exactly.
Correct?
That would be the ideal situation. Yeah, having all the stakeholders involved from the very beginning, as opposed to not trying to catch up when the train has left the station. So yes, all stakeholders need to be involved.
I think that's a correct characterization of what's happening. So I like the word you use. So in a sense, the users and the stakeholders are playing catch up to the solutions that are supposed to be nuanced to them.
I think everybody's playing catch up. So the solution comes before an engagement with the stakeholders, and then the stakeholders try to catch up with it, and then they fall off, and the platform now has to go and try catch up with them and understand why they're leaving the platform and start designing for their needs and all that. So yeah, everybody's playing catch up, which is not ideal. Yeah.
I mean, this it painfully goes to show how we, despite the advancement of technology, the internet, etc., that's pre-COVID, we were very slow. Education, I would say that the education sector was actually very slow to adopt technology and infuse it into our education sector. What do you make of that?
Yes, I agree. It was slow, but I wouldn't use the word slow. I'm hoping to use the word cautious. Because of course there's a lot of things I would need to understand. We want young children to have access to learning devices. How many hours a day? 5, 6 hours a day. There's going to be repercussions for that. Some of us are started feeling it. Working on our computers more. We need to start wearing glasses, or we need to start what do you call it? Like wearing having the screen blockers and stuff like that. So we need to understand the repercussions of using tech extensively, which I guess is something that is, if not done, maybe work in progress, especially in our markets, to understand how we're going to use the technology. Because, when you leave the devices with children, as much as you can block as many features as possible, they would find a way to navigate into something they shouldn't be on, and there's exposure there. So we need to be able to address these concerns, which are valid concerns coming from parents and from children. So of course, to us tech providers, we're like, it's so annoying. We're like, just like put passwords on everything. The kids will only have access to learning content, but we need to actually be empathetic. So yeah, basically, we need to be empathetic and understanding of the situation, the parents' concerns, because that is another reason why people would reject the technology. It's like, oh, these people don't listen to us. So we need to actually listen and also do our research and then convince them that, this is based on what we've studied and what we know now. This is the kind of impact we expect to have in a few years, as opposed to just saying that here's a platform, it has your learning, you can track your students' performance or your students' activity or your child's activity on the platform, so you know whether they're actually learning or not and all that stuff. I think we need to actually break down some of these conversations for our different stakeholders, because like maybe at the ministry level, it's like, okay, we have as many people accessing content, of course they're the biggest stakeholders, so they want as many people accessing education and making sure it's good quality education. But we also have teachers who are like, okay, I know I have some teachers some students who struggle with some concepts. And how is the e-learning platform providing support for that, as opposed to just assuming all learners learn the same and pushing everyone on one platform. And then, of course, also assuring the parents that their needs have been considered, their fears are being addressed, and that this solution is not just going to be like, just do it because it's available. More like, we're a team here. We all want education to succeed. We all want the child to do well, want the student to do well. So let's work as a team as opposed to some sort of struggles internally.
You've literally just said everything I was thinking, and you're absolutely spot on. There's this thing they normally throw around, that's Africa in general. Africa as a whole is playing catch up, and the world is basically just leaving us behind. And the comment I want to make is, we sort of knew that once the internet came into existence, right, whether we liked it or not, no matter the stage of our development, etc., it was going to affect, right, every area of our continent and our economies, etc. And specifically different sectors of our economy, including education, like health, finance, all of those things. Once the internet came out, it was definitely going to have an impact. And so I think the part that bothers me is the fact that we still have a situation where the groundwork that we are supposed to do, i.e., the fact that we should be thinking long term, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ahead, to sort of figure out, what sort of human resource do we want to see in our country, right? And then we sort of start figuring out how to connect all the dots, and all the dots to work together to sort of give us the outcomes that we want. So in education, in health, in finance, in agriculture, etc. Because unfortunately, I think I heard this news last month, I believe, where, so in Ghana, we have a situation where in our secondary schools, they still have the ban on the use of mobile phones and tablets, etc. Because, well, there's the conversation of, and you alluded to it quite rightly, where there's the conversation of, well, we haven't figured out how to properly manage the whole situation of the excesses that come with having these devices in our secondary schools, right? And so, well, whilst we figure it out, it's an outright ban, but you juxtapose that to what's happening in, maybe, if you like, other African countries, what's happening even in private schools, and if you stretch this further, what's happening outside of the continent, and you're realizing how it's like we are pulling ourselves back. And my thing is, if we know this is the situation, then why don't we speed up efforts to sort of figure out, unfortunately, we do have a lot of resources available to us. We have the blueprints, right? Other countries have executed and are executing it quite well, and so we have the opportunity to learn from them and quickly implement procedures or structures, or put in place structures to make sure that we get the benefits that come with the use of technology and technological devices, etc. What do you make of that?
No, I agree. I mean,
Mhm,
first of all, I don't want to say that like Africans are playing catch up.
mhm,
A lot of the world is, well, what we can see is like everyone looks more advanced than we are, but
mhm,
then at some level, they have their really, let's say, backward or
mhm,
really, yeah, situations. But yeah, no, we do limit ourselves. I think we have a couple of limiting beliefs. I think most of our actions are a reflection of our fears and not our hopes.
mhm,
So there's that we need to address as a society. And I think there's also a bit of maybe national pride and national ego around, like, we want to do things ourselves. We don't want to use existing blueprints. Not the best methodology. I always say that, okay, fine, it already exists out there. How can we adapt it instead of having to build everything from scratch? So I hope that we can have more people, looking at what's been done and seeing how they can adapt it for our realities, as opposed to trying to build pretty much the same thing, but because we did everything on our own from scratch. I don't know if there's any prizes for that. So I think that we need to be a bit more open-minded to learning from others,
mhm,
peer learning. Even across the African continent, you see some countries where we operate. are open to solutions coming from anywhere in the world. They don't mind where the solutions are coming from. They're like, as long as the solution does what they need, what solves the problem that they need to solve, that's okay. But we have other countries that are like, yeah, no, we need this to be a local project done in-house. Hire a couple of people from our country to work with you and all that stuff. So those are, to an extent, important conversations that we need to reframe and work on better, especially for Africa as we look at becoming a union, a proper union at some point. I feel like there's so many things we could learn from each other as opposed to trying to do everything individually and then doing the same thing or building nothing at all. So yeah.
Wow. Really interesting stuff, to be honest. Anyway, let's jump into why we're here today. I want you to unpack the mission vision of Chalkboard Education.
I was actually having more fun with the conversation so far than having to repeat my day-to-day job.
Please tell
So
us.
this
Yeah.
is something new. But yeah, so yeah, Chalkboard Education, we've been in existence since 2018. I'm the Chief Operations Officer. I have two co-founders, one who's Ghanaian and one who's French. And our headquarters is here in Ghana. We have most of our staff based here in Ghana as well. Although because we're working remotely, people tend to choose wherever they want to work from and head in that direction. So yeah, that's pretty much a soft introduction to who we are and what we do. But in the long form, as we are a learning management system that basically has three not so unique, but unique for our client base features is that, first of all, we have a dashboard that allows administrators, teachers, parents, anyone create content for their learners. So you can have your own school onboarding yourself onto the dashboard and creating the content and then rolling it out to their learners at their own free will, anytime, anywhere. We also have the mobile application, which is what other learners have on their devices, and that is where they get the content. And the content can be either video formats, text, images, illustrations, a combination of all of that. Quizzes, surveys, and feedback forms so that we can know how to improve our product as well. And then we also have instructional designers, which is a really important aspect when it comes to EdTech. We need people to actually embrace instructional design, because this is what I mentioned to you likely a few sentences back, was that the content is not suited for e-learning, so learners are struggling to adapt or adopt e-learning platforms. So when you have instructional designers working on the content and breaking down the content in user-friendly modules, making it interactive, making sure the learners actually have objectives and they're able to learn and take part in the class as if they were in a classroom or with their fellow learners is really important. It's something that we base on the science of learning. I don't know if you've explored much in that area, but it's just basically how we learn and how we can now adapt some of those principles into the use of technology. So we need to be able to support learners' journeys across e-learning experience. For instance, if you download an application that's really hard to use, you get rid of it within no time. I don't know if that's your experience. That's me. When I download things and the user experience is not great, I delete it and move on like it never happened. So we don't want that to happen in EdTech. We actually need to be able to support the learner's journey. So whenever you're going through the application, you're being supported along the way. You have different cues and different scaffolding sort of to support you through your learning journey. So we have all those three services offered at Chalkboard Education. We operate in 13 countries across the world. So we have 8 of them in Africa, 3 in South America, and 2 in Asia. Of course, looking to expand a lot more. We've been growing quite steadily since 2018. The first 2 years was proof of concept, getting a couple of no's, going, knocking from door to door, doing a couple of demos, having freemium models running. So at this point, we actually had a clash with some of the university lecturers because we had this product and we were telling students how great it is and they should choose our methodology of what instead of what they already know. And the students loved it, but the lecturers were like, this is new and it's also competing with what I'm doing, so I'm not going to endorse this platform. So that was a lesson that we learned the hard way, because now, we're doing EdTech. None of us actually has an EdTech background. We just liked the idea of improving the quality of education across Africa and now the world, and we ran with it. So of course we didn't know how do sales for EdTech. We didn't know how to lobby and get people on our side. So we went through, about 2 or 3 years of no, hell no, get out. Um, before people are like, okay, actually, there's room for you on this table. So yeah, that's been an interesting journey. Looking to scale a bit more in terms of number of users, number of organizations we work with, funding, and even grew our team. Our team has been growing, and of course, majority of them are software developers. But now we're looking to have a more robust team encompassing various aspects of the company.
Amazing, amazing. He gave everything. He gave everything to budding entrepreneurs. Let them know that once you decide to go into entrepreneurship, you're going to be receiving a lot of unforeseen blows and unforeseen knocks from nowhere.
Exactly.
And a lot of no's. I think I'd be honest and tell you, I've actually embarked on a few projects, and wow, I think one of the comforting things I do have talking to different guests from time to time is the fact that you get to tell me I'm not alone. That no that I received probably maybe last week or last month. It's okay. It's okay. You are just going along in the journey. It'll be
Oh
fine.
yeah,
Yeah,
you're on
yeah.
track.
You know,
You're on track.
and it really is comforting to hear. And I hope my listeners who are entrepreneurs and even generally, it doesn't matter who you are listening. Generally, through life, things happen. Things just catch you off guard. It's just for you to know it's just all part of the journey. Just chin up and continue forging ahead. And yeah, just like Chalkboard Education, things will look up and bright.
Yeah,
I want
yeah.
to jump.
It gets better.
It does get better. I like that. It honestly does get better. I want to jump into. I want you to tell me some of the successes you've chalked. Yeah, pun intended.
Gosh, so many.
Yeah.
Well, I think for me personally, is like, of course, like I told you, like me moving to Ghana and like starting the company was a sort of act of rebellion. Just me charting my own path. And my parents thought I was crazy for the longest time. They thought I was unemployed. I'm like, no, guys, I'm employed. Like, I am self-employed. I have a business I'm running. And they're like, oh my gosh, she's lost her mind. Um, so, that went on for the longest time. But
Mhm.
after COVID, I went home in 2021 and I spent quite some time with my parents. And working remotely, working from home, I was able to, just sit in the background as the TV's on and be watching their shows. And my dad is like, "Isn't this what you do?" And I'm like, I wasn't really paying attention to what was being discussed on TV. So he repeated it for me word for word. And he's like, "You're improving the quality of education through technology and you're distributing it to learners on their mobile app, and yours doesn't even use the internet." I was like, "Oh my gosh, you've been paying attention? You know what
Mm,
I do?"
mm, mm,
Yeah. Of
hmm.
course, he's like, "Yeah, but he's like, you need to pay yourself more."
Right.
So yeah, so for me that was a win. I was like,
That was a
had
good
got
one.
had before that, I've gotten so tired of trying to explain to them what it is I do. And I'm like, I
Mhm,
have a meeting, I have to go and try and convince the minister to like take our platform and accept us as a service provider. I have
mm,
to go and like get new clients, I have to go and like resolve issues with the learners. And then like I don't think they were getting it, but
mhm,
when my dad repeated, I was shocked. I was like, oh my gosh, you get it. So for me, that was my personal win.
mhm.
But internally, of course, we've been able to do some fundraising. We're looking to do more. So that was also a really good proof of concept, especially because of how or the process that led to that. So I'll give you a short summary.
Mhm.
So we've been going, from one university to the next, trying to sell our product. And we've been talking to investors along the way as well, telling them like, yeah, sure, we can get as many users as possible. We've been talking to professors, and they don't really tell you no, but they're like, oh, let's see, or someone else has to decide. So they seem to be on your side, right?
Mm,
And then we had an investor say that she wants to go into one of these meetings with us. And we're like, yeah, yeah, sure. The conversations are usually very friendly. We do our demo, we answer questions, and there's no friction or anything. But in
mhm,
this particular meeting, they had one of their decision makers present, and we had been talking to them for quite some time. But
mhm,
we had this decision maker who was present, and he was like not paying attention to the demo and everything. And then we're like, okay, so today we're gonna know if we made the sale or not. And that was gonna be our first sale, right? And we have
mm,
our potential investor present at the time.
mhm.
So we're like, okay, this is gonna be a big one because if she's gonna see that it can actually sell, and then she's going to give us more money than what we're asking for. So we're
Right.
so excited about that. And then after we do our presentation and everything, he asked a couple of questions. And then it's like, yeah, no, he's not interested. He doesn't see the value it adds. La 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 la.
No.
And we were in shock. We were like, what? We're like, oh no, now we're never gonna get the investment. We're never gonna get blah blah blah. And the funny thing is, the lady was like, actually, she loved the presentation. She came on behalf of an investment company. She's like, she loved the presentation. She loved how we pushed and sold it. She does believe in the product, and she just knows that with a bit of help, we can develop what would be a market fit. So that was an embarrassing meeting, to be in. And the girl there was like, no, I don't see it. And she's like, okay, I see why he doesn't see it, and I'm going to give you money to make sure he sees it.
Ah,
um,
nice.
yeah. So that was a comeback we did not know
Mm.
could happen, but we were glad for that. So we got some funding from that, and we expanded the team. We had more people. At that point, the platform was pretty much HTML based. I was an aspiring software developer. The CTO was managing me. The team was pretty small, it was just the three of us. And then, when we got the go ahead, we actually expanded the team. We had more people, did a bit more sales, and that's for the company started growing. So that was a win for us. And then having conversations, so attending different conferences or different seminars or yeah, uh, networking events across the continent and having conversations with just one person. You're like, okay, so this is what I do. And just usual conversation that we'd have at a networking event. And they come back to you and they're like, okay, yeah, sure, I want to start in like 3 months. Here's my content. My users are based here, here, and here. How much should I pay? And we're like, what is this really happening? And then you do it the first time, and of course we have the internal friction. I call it the duck effect. Like how a duck on the surface of water looks super calm, underneath is like paddling.
Paddling, right?
Yeah. So we that's how we were working for that first time, because that's the first real paying client that we have. And they're eager to launch, and they're like, we can't mess this up. We have to do this really well so that they can tell their friends about us, and then we can get more of them coming our way. And yeah, so that worked out, and they kept saying, okay, we want to expand, we want to add more people to the product and the project. We've actually just launched with them in northern Ghana for about 5,000 users. Outside of the other projects that we're working on with them. So that was really good. And being able to also maintain these relationships has been really important. Like I said, none of us had any background in EdTech or sales or relationship management. All of us were just like fresh out of uni with big ideas, and we've had to learn on the job. And being able to achieve this, being able to sustain our teams has been really highlights. Maintain our clients and then sustain our team, being able to pay people month to month without fail has been really great. Of course, when you're a founder, you see the runway and you can see that it's red. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to need to make this money in like the next 3 days. And a client is like, okay, fine, I want to pay in advance. I want to pay for a year in advance. And then you have all the money you need to pay the team and you have a bit more runway. So the company doesn't die. So yeah, those are some of our wins.
Wow, it's crazy. Time has flown by. I'm definitely calling you back for some other discussion on different things. But listen, Genevieve,
Yeah, sure.
the conversation with you gave everything. I mean, I appreciated your optimism, your insights, your passion, definitely your commitment. And listen, the education space is really happy to have yourself and your outfits, existing in the marketplace. And we are happy. I'm genuinely, I'm happy to have had this conversation with you. You've sent my mind to places that I probably wasn't paying attention to or even, took into consideration. The conversation was rich. It was everything I had hoped and wanted. I know definitely my listeners have picked up a whole lot, and especially for the entrepreneurs, people who are looking to, if you like, leverage on technology to come up with really, nuanced, really contextual solutions to the problems of education. I'm sure you have sent inspiration and encouragement their way. And I want to thank you for hopping on the Let's Talk Education Africa podcasts with me today. Please, please, please keep that fire burning. Continue to make that transformation one teacher, student at a time. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Kwame. It's been a real pleasure. Yeah, definitely looking forward to the next conversations, your future guests.
Mm,
I've been following the podcast, of course, since we met, and it's doing what it needs to do. I think these are good conversations we need to have.
mm,
And part of the reason I jumped on this is like we go to a lot of this networking events, and there's a lot of talk about what's not working and what would be nice, but there's no action. So
mm.
when you took the action and decided, you know what, we're having this conversation. Here's your meeting link, join me. I was like, okay, I like the action. So yeah, keep it up.
Yeah.
Looking forward to your startup. Looking forward to how many L's you collect before you get
Hmm.
your win. But
Hmm.
it gets, like I said, it gets better. It gets better.
Thank you so much, Genevieve. This was fantastic. And to our listeners, I am definitely sure you've picked up a thing or two from the conversation with Genevieve today. She did a good job today. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I'm sure you did too. Please keep an eye on our podcast. There's a lot of people we are going to bring on who are going to unpack what it is that you do in the education space, and I'm excited to have that conversation with them. And so until next episode, please stay safe. Cheers.